Hi, I'm Rob. Welcome to 741 Outdoors. Today I was out walking in one of the state forests here in northern Connecticut and decided to wander off the path and check on something that I haven't checked on in a while. I thought I'd turn the camera on and kind of let you guys have a look along with me. Now what you may be able to see behind me, I'm not sure how well this camera is going to show it, is sort of a depression in the ground. Now I believe that back in the 1920s and 30s and even into the early 40s, that this piece of property was an orchard and maybe a tree farm, and that this site was either used as sort of a greenhouse or a holding area for maybe the fruits that were harvested from the trees. Now just so you guys can look around, I'm just going to kind of do a quick 360-degree panorama, and you can see I'm in the middle of the woods. There's no path to get to this spot. There's no road to get to this spot. It's fully overgrown and nature has taken its course. Now this isn't just your average old abandoned cellar hole in the middle of the woods. There's something unique in this cellar hole that I like to check on every couple of years and see if it's still there and actually functional. Let's go in there and take a look. Now first up here at the far end of the hole, there's a few stacked stones that are sort of collapsed and almost sort of a dugout trough. This is probably how people accessed this back in the day when there was a structure here. Now having grown up not far from here, I've known about this place since I was quite young. And the reason that I'm fairly certain this was a greenhouse and not, say, a house or a barn or something like that is partially because of the stories that I was told by the older people that were around when I was a kid and talked about this place. And the other thing that clues me into the fact that this wasn't, say, a livable house is because this depression has no stones along the sides. It's just kind of a depression in the ground. Whereas a homestead or a barn even would have had some kind of a stone foundation in it. At least that's what's typical here in Connecticut. But that's not the unique thing that I wanted to show you. Let's go over there to the far end and I'll show you what's going on. Now it's been a couple of years since I've been here, and at first I thought it was gone, but I felt around for it. Just below these stones, there is a faucet here in the ground. And you can see with all the leaves and stuff piling up, it's slowly getting buried in the earth. Now if I pull away some of the peat and the leaves here so you guys can get a look at it, this thing is still in remarkable condition. You can see there's still plating on the plumbing and on the knob, and everything is turning freely. Now the last time I was here, I could actually turn this knob, but right now it's seized up. And I didn't bring any tools with me to help me kind of leverage this thing. But if I put my finger down here in the mouth of the spigot, it almost feels like there's some ice in there, which makes sense because it is the end of January. And even though today is not a cold day, it's been cold the last few weeks. So this thing is probably frozen up. So I actually put my gloves on and used both hands, and I was able to get this to turn. And you can see there's quite a bit of water coming out of this thing. Now I think it is still frozen up a little bit, and that's why we're not getting a full kind of stream out of it. But in the springtime, this thing will actually run pretty good. For now, I'm just going to crank this thing closed. Maybe I need to come back with a screwdriver and tighten that up some. And then I think I'll just cover this back up with the leaves so that if there are any passerbys, they don't happen to notice it's there and try and vandalize it. So you may be wondering how an old faucet in the middle of the woods still flows water with pressure. Well, you may be able to tell in the camera that we're sort of on a hillside here. If we go up the hill, I believe there is the remnants of an old well up there, and this thing is just gravity fed from that well. Let's go check it out and see if we can find where the old well was. So we're about 100, maybe 150 feet away from where the faucet is. And right here behind me, there is a pile of stones. Now if we get in and take a closer look at this, I don't think that this spot is where the well was. But obviously something was going on here. We don't know if there was sort of another foundation or some kind of a structure down here in this depression that's next to this pile of stones, or if this has something to do with the water system. Now there is another pile of these stones not far over here, so let's go check that out. Now in a straight line from that big pile of stones over there, there's a smaller pile right over there. We'll check that out in a minute. And then another smaller pile right here. Now if we take a look at this pile, there's no depression around it. And in fact, there's sort of a larger boulder that they're all resting on. So I'm not sure what was going on here. Obviously something, but I don't think it has anything to do with the well. The small pile of stones is over there. We're maybe about 30 or 40 feet away. And here's this other smaller pile. And again, you know, probably not a lot was going on here. There's like a larger stone there and just a few kind of placed on top. It's a little hard to see with these trees growing, but obviously this was arranged for some reason. And then just for reference, you guys probably really can't see it. The cellar hole is just over there on the hillside. So those stone piles are interesting, but I don't think that they're necessarily tied in with the well in any way, but obviously are related to whatever it is went on in here 100 years ago. I believe the old filled-in well is up over here. Let's see if we can find it. So now I'm up at the high point in the area, and you may be able to see behind me, there's sort of a pile of boulders in almost a depressed area. I believe this is where the well was. If we take a look at this boulder field, I'd have to guess that it's roughly 20 or 25 feet in diameter or so, although this isn't really a perfect circle. But if we take a look at this side over here, if we kind of poke down, you can see there's a little snow in the bottom, but over on the right, there is definitely sort of a stone retaining wall that I believe formed the edge of the well. Now you guys may have spotted this just a second ago. I just noticed it, but there's a tennis ball here in the middle of nowhere for almost no reason. Well, there is sort of an access road right there that people can walk or drive down in four-wheel drive trucks. You may also be able to see a beer can over there. I'm not sure why there would be a tennis ball though. Now if we come on the other side of the boulder field and take a look, you can see these things are just strewn in here kind of haphazardly. There's a lot of gap in between them, although it does look like there is sort of solid ground in there. It was a long time ago that this thing was filled in, but I vaguely remember when I was a kid coming over here before it was filled in and seeing like rotted planks or something covering it up, kind of a thing. We always stayed away from it as kids. I believe when the state came in and filled this in, they did put some kind of sand or soil in there along with these boulders, so that if you were to sort of step in between those boulders, you wouldn't necessarily fall to your death. You would hit some kind of a ground, although the boulders are in there fairly tight, so I think the worst you would do in there is twist an ankle. But just the same, I don't think I'll go hopping around in there. Now just adjacent to the old well is sort of a second depression that was filled in with boulders as well, although it's much smaller. So I don't know if this was a secondary well or if there was some kind of a pump house or something was placed here. But either way, this was sort of capped off and filled in as well. So the well is over there. It's maybe about 25 or 30 feet away. I've never noticed this before, but there's a big chunk of angle iron in the ground. And then interestingly enough, next to the angle iron is sort of another old, looks like a pile of stones. Hard to tell with all the vegetation and leaves and stuff on top of it, but this doesn't look natural, and I don't believe it's from the time when the well was filled in. I believe this is probably original to whatever was here. So that first piece of angle iron is right over there, and then on the other side of this sort of mound is another one in the ground right here. Now there's another unique feature about this piece of property, and I'm not sure it's going to be real visible here. I'll step down inside this thing, maybe you can tell that way. But there are these irrigation canals that run kind of all over the place in this area, and all seem to kind of coalesce near the well, which is now back behind me, just kind of behind that large tree right there. Now if I get the camera in a little closer, maybe you can kind of see this sort of sharp V-shaped groove that goes off in the woods that way. Another thing I was hoping to find while I was out here was the remains of a foundation, or really a concrete slab that was put in place for the purposes of erecting a windmill. Now, I found that concrete pad once when I was a kid, when I was out here with my dad. He told me that they had put the concrete pad in but never erected the windmill. Now, we weren't exactly sure of the whole story behind that, but the suspicion is that the project was started right before World War II broke out. Now, of course, once the war broke out, resources and money were a little bit scarce, and the whole state of the world was a bit unknown. And that's around the time that I believe that the tree farm and the orchard out here ceased to operate. And once the war was over, this land was transferred to the state. Now, I'm not sure if the original owners gave it to the state or the state took it over because of failure to pay taxes or something along those lines. But either way, it's been a state forest since the end of World War II or thereabouts. Now, anyway, I'm not so sure if this is the spot. Now, there's obviously kind of a flat area here with no vegetation growing in it, but I didn't bring anything to dig with. And if I kind of poke in here with my foot, I'm not finding any indication that there's anything under here. Now, this may not be the exact spot where the pad was, but the well is over here just behind me, so I'm sure it's in this general area somewhere. And if I came back out here with maybe a shovel or a pick or something like that and kind of poked around, I'd probably find it again. So the old foundation, the faucet, and the well aren't the only mysteries in this forest. There's a few other sites that I plan to document and explore here in upcoming videos. If you're interested in learning more, please consider subscribing to the channel and leave me a comment down below on this video and let me know what you thought. Thanks for watching.